Parrying is my favorite part of the game right now. You can do critical attacks, you can do lethal attacks, you can absolutely own your enemy. Hello everyone, my name is Formalligator, the Formalligator, and this is the 10th anniversary of the devlog series of Any Journey. It's been 10 weeks and I think it's about time that we take a look back at the progress we've made so far. So this Wednesday I will upload a new video which does exactly that, so stay tuned for that. But for now, let's get into the changes. This is going to be a shorter video because I finished 0.6 this Wednesday. 0.7 is completely different, so I want to save that for next week. First of all, you can now parry in the game, which means that if the enemy attacks you with a melee weapon and you block in just the right time, then the enemy will get stunned, his attack will get negated, and it will leave the enemy open for an attack which will be a critical attack, or if you do a power attack, it will be a lethal attack, which is twice as bad as a critical attack. And the enemies can parry as well, so watch out for that. Next up we have the pathfinding and the enemy AI, which have been completely redesigned. The enemy pathfinding now uses an A-star algorithm designed specifically for the types of levels that we're dealing with. Instead of basic breadth first search, which was the previous algorithm, we now use an A-star algorithm, which takes into account the distance from every cell in the level grid to the player. This is a way better way of calculating the best path to the player from every enemy in the game. Also, this pathfinding is only calculated once the enemy leaves its cell, so once its position shifts enough to leave its 32 by 32 cell that is part of the pathfinding grid. The pathfinding grid is now made of 32 by 32 cells, which is the size of a small barrel, so all of the furniture is in the grid. It previously used a 64 by 64 grid, which is the size of an entire wall, so now it's way more accurate, and all of the game objects like chests and display cases and beds and all this type of stuff is recognized in the pathfinding algorithm. Now, the enemy AI is the real fun stuff, because the enemy AI now works. So, I'm not saying that this is how it's going to be from this point on and it will never change, but this is the behavior that it displays so far. So, if the enemy has a ranged weapon, the AI is completely different than if it has a melee weapon. If the enemy has a shield, its behavior is different, and it will also change depending on the player's equipment. So, if you have a shield, then that means that you have the ability to block, so the enemy will behave differently. So, the ranged AI, what it does is it will try to stay a certain distance away from you, and it will run away from you once you get close to it, and it will charge up their weapons and then shoot at you, of course, because they're ranged. What it will also do is it will kind of shift left and right, so it's harder for you to hit them with your own ranged weapon. And the melee AI is more complicated. The melee AI, it tries to get close to you, of course, and it will charge their weapons, and it can block, and it can even parry, and it can react to your blocks. The way that it gets these behaviors is how I've coded it now, but it can change in the future. I can improve it just slowly, you know, because this is something that can only really be tested if you really play the game, and that's not something that I do often, so I will have to playtest it. If an enemy manages to kill you, then you don't just get a little display text that says you died and you can just still walk around, which was how it was handled previously. Now you actually explode as if you were an enemy, so you explode and all your equipment is thrown around the room, and it is even possible that you have a longsword or something and it will be part of the explosion and it will hit an enemy in the head or whatever, and the enemy will die, so you can even kill enemies beyond the grave. There's a non-zero chance that this will happen. Some little changes include the status text, which are the little messages that come up from an enemy when you hit them. Red is for damage, grey is for blocked damage, it will say critical when you do a critical hit, it will say lethal in even bigger, bolder letters when you do a lethal hit, and it will say parry in gold letters when you parry, it will say parried in grey letters once an enemy is parried. Up next for next week and the weeks after that is 0.7. 0.7 is going to be quite different, because for now, for 0.5 and 0.6 we've been focused a lot on the levels and the content within the levels, but next week 0.7 will be focused on the world. The world generation will change a little bit, the locations will change completely. I've thought about what to do with the world and how to like give the player these missions and levels, how they can access them. And this is the plan right now, which may change because things have changed a lot since the first episode. My idea is that you will be able to click on every location and you will be able to go to any location and you will be able to enter every location that's open, even if you don't have the correct journey for it. So if there's a ruin in the world, you can go to it, you can go into it, you can explore it, you can fight the boss, even if you don't have the proper mission for it. So it will be kind of open world, but the traveling between locations will just be on a menu, I think. And you will be able to go into the outposts and castles, and there will be just soldiers walking around. That's the idea I have right now. If I don't do it, don't hit me. You will be able to go into these cities and towns, but I thought about, like, should I generate an entire city? Which is possible, but it will take a lot of time, and I think I can spend that time on other exciting things than city generation. City generation would take like more than a month, and this comment, shout out to you, gave me the idea for taverns, which is actually a really good idea, because if you go into a town, what are you going to do at like residential housing? Like nothing, no. You go to the tavern, of course, as an adventurer. So when you go into a town, you will go to like this little pub, saloon area, and there you can have someone who represents the nation that the town is a part of, like a city guard person, and he will tell you the bounties, and then you can accept the bounty journeys, and then you will have to travel yourself to the ruin or camp or whatever, and there you will have to complete the well, you won't have to, it's open world, you can do whatever you like, but that's the idea. You will go to the location and you will complete the mission. That's just the city guard, so you can also meet people from different factions who can point you to places where you can do missions for these mysterious factions, like the cultist faction, who is right now just an enemy type, but eventually it will be an actual faction. So that is going to be 0.7, and that's been all from me for this week. I want to take a moment to thank the people who have been following me for 10 weeks, or since whenever you've been subscribed. I don't blame you for not having subscribed the first week, because that video is actually pretty terrible. Yes, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate it. It does give me quite some motivation to actually keep on developing every single day. And thank you for liking, subscribing, and all that stuff, all that YouTuber stuff. I'm not a YouTuber, I'm just a guy who works on a game. Okay. And if you have any ideas, just leave them in the comments, because I'm just one guy. The more ideas, the merrier. Thank you so much. Have a good day, have a good week, have a good life. Goodbye. Anyway, that's all for today. That's all for this week. I will see you next week, and we'll see what progress we made. Okay.